Hello. Hi, this is Francis calling from the CAMHS single point of access team. So I'm just calling to ask a few questions today. Is that okay? Can I get a meteor, but swap out the barbecue base for a tomato base? Could I get a bottle of Coke? Oh, and some garlic bread actually. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thanks for your time. Bye. Hello. If you're new to my channel, my name's Francis. I'm studying for a Master's in Developmental Psychology and Clinical Practice at UCL. For 3 days a week, I'm on placement in CAMHS in Southwest London. I am on episode 2 of taking you through a day in my life. When cases come into CAMHS, a lot of them are just selected for an individual assessment, but for certain cases, the team decides that a systemic intervention is worth giving. In this case, it's a one-off session called a family consultation. So family consultancy, family therapy is a systemic intervention. We try and think of a person's psychological problems as not residing within the one person, but more the product of the systems around the person. So in CAMHS, for a young person, that might be their family, their friends, their school, basically the network of people around the child. It's run by either a family therapist or systemic therapist alongside a second clinician. So there's 2 of us in the room with the whole family. We try and talk about the young person's difficulties without seeking to blame any one person, but like getting the perspectives of everyone in the family, try and facilitate better dynamics within the family. And the byproduct of that, ideally, is a reduction in, say, symptoms of anxiety for a child. So it's currently just gone 9. I have a family consultation which will start at 9:30. I'm going to be second clinician for that, which is always fun. So now I'm going to read the notes on the system for the young person and their family. A lot of cases in CAMHS have been to CAMHS before, so there might be an extensive collection of notes, or it might be their first experience with CAMHS, so there might not be many notes at all. I'm going to have a gander at the notes now, then head down for the session. A family consultancy session's 90 minutes. Before each session, there is a pre-session for half an hour. The 2 clinicians discuss what are we thinking in terms of a systemic formulation of the difficulties. Sometimes, if there's a third person shadowing, they might go on Teams and shadow, or there's a special room downstairs which has a 2-way mirror. Is that what they're called? There's a 2-way mirror, so you can have unlimited numbers of clinicians behind this mirror. Now I'm going to go down for the pre-session. It's with a family therapist who has very kindly agreed to take part in this video. Later on, I'm going to be interviewing him, grilling him. During the sessions, we also use one of these, which is a toy box unboxing video. We have some paper for drawing if the children get bored. It could also be good to draw a genogram, which is just like a diagram of the family tree. Little popping thing. These are very nice indeed. Felt tips. Also, there should be a fidget cube, but there does not seem to be one inside. Watching the way a child plays can actually be very insightful. Play is the way they might communicate unconscious things to you. Family consultancies can be about trying to get the child to articulate what they're expressing so honestly through play.
Sometimes I'll do like a family sculpt, asking children specifically to pick out individual animals that represent themselves and their family members, and then asking them to kind of sculpt a scene of when things are going well with the family, and then to sculpt another scene of when maybe anger comes into the family or anxiety comes into the family, and how does that kind of change the picture. Usually we end up with asking them to sculpt a third scene. What would your ideal scene look like when anger comes into the family? What do you want mom to do in that situation and dad to do, and where do you want to be? So
it's a combination of like entertainment as well as real therapeutic insight. I'm going to take this down to the pre-session with Richard and go from there. It's always really interesting to meet the family in person after having read notes about them. During the sessions, the first clinician basically runs it, asks all the questions, and the second clinician is more someone who chips in if they have anything to ask. So after a family consultancy session, we have a post-session, which is basically a debrief between the clinicians to decide what's going to go in the therapeutic letter, which is my job to write as second clinician. The job of the therapeutic letter is to summarize what the session covered and offer food for thought. So I'll go through a therapeutic letter as I write it, but firstly, I am pretty hungry. 2.5 hours of contact time, essentially. So let's go to the canteen. This colourful building is where the canteen is at the hospital. It's Thursday, which means it's curry day. So we're going to have a curry and see what it's saying. All right, lunchtime is done, and now we're going to write the therapeutic letter. So we've been writing for half an hour. A lot of the letters follow the same structure. It starts with some things we learned about the family, like their hobbies, things they like to do together, all the strengths the family has, which is really important, obviously, in a mental health service. Put you here. In a mental health service, it can be easy to kind of focus on the negative aspects of a child's life, which if they constantly had experiences with services, then they're basically just getting all this negative information in. These are all the things wrong with you. So I think it's really important to have a paragraph in letters like this that outline strengths and things they're good at. That's the first paragraph. The second is usually, what did we learn about people not in this session? Because obviously, due to the practicalities of having an appointment during the working day, it might only be that one parent turns up, or maybe uncles and aunties are quite relevant to the family and they aren't there. Maybe a sibling isn't there. Holding them in mind as well in the letter. And then you move on to what themes kind of emerge from the session. In the letter, it's not necessarily about here's the problem, here's like the steps 1, 2, 3 to fix it. It's more like here's how we understand the problem. Here's some ideas we have which you are welcome to try. Camera got too hot. Interesting times we live in. Yeah, in terms of advice in the letter that we suggested, firstly, it can be quite difficult, especially at a young age, to introspect on what is physically happening in your body when you get anxious. Like, does your heart start beating faster? Do you like tense all your muscles, like tense your jaw, for example? Just being able to recognize those signs can make it feel a little more under control, which is kind of the first step to reducing the anxiety, really. And then another thing with anxiety can be thought challenging. So maybe like you're worried that your parent's going to get into a car crash, and it can be really hard in anxiety to remind yourself of like the likelihood of certain things happening when you're anxious. The feeling kind of takes over, and like the likelihood of a car crash or a plane crash is so certain in your mind. So in the letter, we kind of gently encouraged thought challenging, like thinking, how many times when I have worried about that in the past has it actually happened? How often has the anxiety come true? A lot of the time it will be a low percentage. And then finally, a more systemic suggestion was about the way the parent handles anxiety in the young person. So when me and Richard discussed this, we thought about the way the parent might potentially be a bit dismissing of the child's anxiety, which obviously is coming from a good place of like wanting to reassure them that everything's going to be fine. But on the other hand, it's also important to validate how the child's feeling. It can still be helpful to offer empathy with their experience and sort of validate their feelings before moving on to the conversation of everything's actually going to be okay. We sort of just offered that as like food for thought. So for the rest of the afternoon, I'm going to work on this letter and also have supervision, which is a very important part of my placement and clinical psychology. So yeah, I'm going to have that and I'll offer some thoughts about it. Supervision's a space just to basically talk about your cases as a psychologist. Anything can come up in sessions, so it's really nice to have that kind of space. Just get reassurance and get an idea of, I know where to go next. Sometimes I've had supervision with other assistant psychologists. You can also present stuff, certain conditions or parts of the team that others might not know about. You can present a paper, you can do all sorts. We did colouring in once in a group supervision, make of that what you will. Some supervisors want to like get to know you and it feels like a very personal bond that you build, whereas others are more concentrated on like procedure, doing the job. At the end of the day, they both lead to the same outcome. But I think in my case, I preferred supervisions that have been more personable. Supervision is something I think I will figure out more and more over time as I both have other supervisors and train to be a supervisor as a clinical psychologist. I have much to learn. If you're also new to this field, one piece of advice I have is voice concerns. If you have an issue, maybe with boundaries or workload, for example, it's important to not feel like you can't raise concern or like you have to work really, really hard to the point where it's taking a toll on you just to like be in the job. I don't think that should be how it is. It's a difficult one. Sometimes your supervisor is also your line manager if you're doing a paid position, and then there's like a sort of conflict of interest of, should I just appear like I'm doing my job like completely fine, unaffected, or should I be honest and like, you know, get the supervisor's containment and like reassurance? Those are some of my reflections. I think I'm going to call it a day now. What does an actual family therapist do, and not just me, some guy who's played Warzone in his spare time? Here's an interview I did with Richard, the family therapist. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Richard. I'm a family therapist here at Wandsworth CAMHS in the Tier 2 service.
What does that involve? What is a family therapist?
I think the best way to actually even kind of contrast that with maybe what an individual therapist might do. I think individual therapy is very much interested in what's going on inside of the individual.
Yeah.
Thoughts, beliefs, feelings, wishes inside of the individual, whereas I think family therapy is interested in what's sort of going on between people, between family members, how families kind of co-create reality together, meanings, perceptions, that kind of stuff.
Why did you end up in family therapy? What drew you to that from like doing a psychology degree?
I genuinely believe that the family has the best potential to be the greatest source of support for any individual. When families are connected and they're in touch with each other and they're communicating well or well enough, I think that could be the best form of support for anybody in the family. And so that's why I went into family therapy as opposed to maybe a sort of individual focus.
What do you think the worst part of your job is here? Supervision was fun as always. It's good to like decompress really from the week. So now I'm going to go home and just think about life really. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you very much for watching. This is the second in a 3-part series about working at CAMHS on my master's placement. So I've done one talking about assessments, done today talking about family therapy, and then I'll do another one next time where I talk about neurodevelopmental conditions like autism and ADHD. So stay tuned for that. I will see you very soon.